Beauty and the Beast. Chapter 1. The Merchant's Fall. Once upon a time, in a bustling port city wrapped in the golden arms of trade and travel, lived a wealthy merchant with his 3 daughters. His ships were known in every harbor, his name spoken with admiration by traders far and wide. He had everything: fine clothes, servants, imported spices, and ornate furniture, but what he treasured most were his daughters. The youngest of them was named Isabel, though everyone lovingly called her Beauty. She wasn't admired for extravagant dresses or jewelry like her sisters, but for her gentle spirit, curious mind, and the kindness she offered even to beggars on the street. While her older sisters spent afternoons in front of mirrors or arguing over suitors, Beauty spent hers lost in books and dreams. Then one stormy evening, the merchant received a letter that would change everything. All his ships, every last one, had been lost at sea. The great merchant had fallen. Death swallowed his home. Servants left. Friends vanished. And the once proud family was forced to move from their grand manor to a small, weather-beaten cottage on the edge of a quiet forest. The older daughters wept for their lost luxury, but Beauty embraced the change with quiet strength. She fetched water, cooked, cleaned, and tended to the garden without complaint. Her sisters mocked her for it, calling her a maid in disguise. But Beauty only smiled. "Happiness doesn't come from silk and gold," she would say. "It grows from peace in the heart." Even in hardship, she carried grace. One day, years after their fall, the merchant learned that one of his ships had miraculously returned to port, salvaged from the storm. With hope rekindled, he set off to retrieve what was left. Before he left, he asked his daughters what gifts they wished for if fortune smiled on him. "Silk scarves," cried the eldest. "Gold rings," said the second. Beauty, who had been feeding birds near the window, looked up and said softly, "Just a single rose, father. One red rose, like the ones that used to grow outside our old window." The merchant smiled at her simple wish. But he didn't know that this rose would lead them all into the heart of a curse. Chapter 2. The Rose and the Curse. The merchant's journey began with hope. As he rode toward the port city, thoughts of repayment and restoration danced in his mind. Maybe he could rebuild, provide again for his daughters, and return not as a broken man but as the father they once admired. But hope is a fragile thing. When he reached the docks, he learned that the ship had been salvaged, yes, but pirates had stripped it bare. Only a few crates of spoiled fabric and cracked porcelain remained. His dreams, once again, were dashed. Heart heavy, he turned his horse homeward, defeated. A storm rolled over the hills as evening fell. Cold and weary, the merchant sought shelter in the woods. Trees groaned under the wind, and his horse trembled from the chill. Just as despair set in, a strange light flickered between the trees. There stood a castle. Not a ruin, but a grand, living castle with torches blazing, gates open wide, and no soul in sight. Drawn by desperation, the merchant entered. Food was laid out on a table, warm, rich, untouched. A fire danced in the hearth. Though confused, he was too hungry and tired to resist. He ate, warmed himself, and found a bed that night softer than any he'd ever known. When morning came, he wandered into the garden. Birds sang, fountains whispered, and roses bloomed as though time had never touched them. And there, near the gate, stood a single rose bush more beautiful than all the rest. Remembering Beauty's request, he leaned forward and plucked a single, perfect rose. a roar shook the air. From the shadows leapt a creature, tall as a man, cloaked in fur and fury. Its eyes glowed gold, its horns curled like a ram's, and its voice thundered with ancient wrath. "You dare steal from me after I gave you shelter?" it growled. The merchant dropped the rose, falling to his knees. "Please. I meant no harm. It was for my daughter, she asked for nothing else." The beast's rage paused at the word daughter. "Then your life is mine, unless she comes willingly to take your place." The merchant, terrified and trembling, nodded. The beast handed him the rose. "Return in 7 days. If she does not come, you shall not leave these woods alive." With that, the merchant was thrown from the castle gates, the rose clutched in his hand like a curse dressed in petals. He rode home under gray skies, the beauty of the rose now sharp with dread. Chapter 3: Beauty's Brave Choice. When the merchant returned to the small cottage, his face was pale, and his hands trembled even as he held out the rose. Beauty rushed to greet him with a smile, her eyes lighting up at the sight of the flower she had wished for. But her smile quickly faded when she saw the look in his eyes. Over a flickering fire, he told his daughters everything about the castle, the feast, the garden, and the terrible beast who demanded a price for a single rose. The elder sisters screamed in horror. "Why did you even pick a flower? For her of all people?" "It's her fault," the second snapped. "Always trying to be so humble. Now she's brought a curse on us." But Beauty said nothing. She sat quietly, eyes fixed on the rose lying on the table like a symbol of doom. She understood what her father had given up for her, and what now must be done. "I will go," she said, her voice calm but firm. "No," her father cried, reaching for her hand. "I'd rather die than let you face that monster." Beauty looked at him with quiet strength. "You gave up everything for us. Your ships. Your home. Your pride. If a rose costs me my comfort, then I have given far less than you have." The next morning, before the mist had cleared from the fields, Beauty packed a small bag, kissed her weeping father on the cheek, and mounted his horse. Her sisters did not come to say goodbye. As the trees closed in and the forest thickened, Beauty held the rose close to her heart. "I'm not afraid," she whispered to herself, even though her hands were cold. By dusk, the castle appeared again, majestic and strange, with golden torches lighting a path through the snow-dusted woods. As she passed through the gate, the doors creaked open on their own, and soft music echoed from deep within. A voice, low and rich, floated through the air. "You have come of your own will?" "I have," Beauty replied, standing tall, though her legs shook beneath her dress. "Then welcome," the voice said. "This is your home now." The doors shut behind her with a whisper like wind through ancient stone, and the rose, still in her hand, seemed to glow in the twilight. Beauty had entered the castle not as a prisoner, but as a promise. Chapter 4: The Silent Castle. The moment Beauty stepped inside, the castle swallowed her with warmth and wonder. The cold of the forest vanished behind velvet curtains, and golden chandeliers glowed like stars across ceilings high as treetops. Yet, not a single soul greeted her. There were no servants bustling about. No footsteps echoed down the marbled halls. Only silence, and a strange sense that she was being watched. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors closed behind her, not with a slam, but a soft sigh. "Follow the lights," said the beast's voice, though he was nowhere in sight. Before her, a row of floating candles appeared in the air. They drifted forward slowly, leading her through a maze of elegant hallways. Portraits of noble faces with sad eyes watched her pass, and grand tapestries whispered forgotten tales as she brushed past them. At the end of the corridor, the candles stopped at a large wooden door. It opened on its own, revealing a cozy chamber bathed in gold and rose-colored light. A crackling fireplace waited in one corner, and a tray of warm food stood on the table. "Eat," the voice urged. "You must be hungry." Beauty sat slowly, half expecting invisible hands to appear. But no one came. And yet, the fire danced higher. Her plate filled itself. A napkin floated gently to her lap. Everything in the castle obeyed unseen magic. When she had finished, the same soft voice returned. "Rest now. Tomorrow, you are free to explore." That night, Beauty lay in the softest bed she had ever known, the red rose beside her pillow. Sleep came slowly. Not because she feared the beast, but because the castle itself felt alive. Like it was watching. Like it remembered something. In the stillness, she whispered into the dark. "Who are you really?" The wind outside sighed, but gave no answer. Chapter 5: Dinner with the Beast. When morning came, the castle was already awake. The curtains parted on their own, letting golden sunlight spill across the room. A dress, elegant yet simple, was laid out at the foot of her bed. Beauty dressed slowly, still wondering if this was all a dream, or a spell too deep to escape. After breakfast, she explored. The castle, though grand, had a quiet sorrow stitched into its walls. In the garden, roses bloomed year-round. The library was endless, filled with books from faraway kingdoms and forgotten ages. Every room held something magical, a harp that played itself, mirrors that showed the stars, clocks that ticked backward and forward all at once. But still, no people. Only the silence, and the feeling of being watched gently, like someone cared too much to disturb her. That evening, as the sun bled orange across the sky, the beast's voice returned. "Join me for dinner." She hesitated, but agreed. The dining hall was vast, lit by chandeliers taller than trees and a table longer than any she'd seen. But at one end sat a single place set for two. And then, he entered. The beast. He was taller than any man, his shoulders broad and cloaked in midnight blue. His face was partly shadowed, partly shaped like a lion and a bear, yet his eyes, they were unmistakably human. Not cruel. Not cold. But deeply, painfully sad. Beauty did not flinch. He bowed. "I am grateful you came." She nodded. "You gave my father his life. This is my thanks." They sat, and dinner began. Dishes appeared as though summoned by thought, and soft music played somewhere above them. For a while, they ate in silence. But then the beast asked, "Do you find this castle pleasant?" "Yes," Beauty replied honestly. "But lonely." His gaze dropped. "It has been lonely for a very long time." They spoke then, of books, of gardens, of music and art. The beast asked her nothing of the outside world, as if it pained him to remember it. But he listened to her with rapt attention, laughing gently at her stories, surprised at her questions. At the end of the meal, he stood slowly and asked, in a voice that trembled, "Will you marry me?" Beauty gasped. No, she said quietly, kindly. I'm sorry. The beast nodded once, as if he expected her answer. I understand. Good night, Beauty. And then he left, slower than before. That night, Beauty stared out the window at the moon and wondered. Who is he really, and what curse has bound his soul so tightly to this place? Chapter 6, The Secret in the West Wing. The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. Beauty spent her mornings reading in the endless library, her afternoons wandering the rose gardens or painting in the glass conservatory, and her evenings at dinner with the beast. He asked her every night the same question. Will you marry me? And every night, she replied with gentle honesty. No. Yet he never grew angry. Never raised his voice. He only sighed and said, Good night, Beauty, before fading back into the shadows of his castle. One afternoon, while walking along a corridor she hadn't explored, she noticed a staircase leading up into a dark tower. Something about it felt forbidden. The air around it was colder, heavier. She hesitated. Then climbed. The stone steps creaked beneath her feet. At the top was a tall door carved with thorns and strange runes. The wood was cracked, the brass handle covered in dust. A chill ran down her spine. She pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dark but filled with strange light. Tattered curtains hung over shattered windows. A cracked mirror stood in the corner, its glass webbed with veins of silver. On a table lay a glass dome, and beneath it, a glowing red rose. But this rose was different. Its petals were falling, one by one, and disappearing before they hit the floor. Beauty stepped closer, heart pounding. The rose seemed to pulse with life and sorrow. A single petal drifted down and vanished in a spark of red light. Behind her, a voice whispered, You were not meant to see this. She turned. The beast stood at the doorway, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. Not angry, just deeply wounded. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to intrude. He looked past her to the rose. Every time you say no, another petal falls. Beauty's breath caught. What does it mean? The beast said nothing for a long time. Then, with a voice soft as wind through dying leaves, he said, When the last petal falls, I will be no more. He turned and walked away. And this time, she didn't try to stop him. Chapter 7, A Dream of the Past. That night, Beauty couldn't sleep. Her thoughts swirled around the falling rose, the cursed silence of the castle, and the loneliness behind the beast's eyes. What could cause such a powerful spell? Who was he before he became the creature cloaked in sorrow? The moonlight cast silver shadows across her bed, and her eyes drifted shut. And then, she dreamed. But it wasn't like any dream she'd known before. She stood in the very same castle, but it was alive with laughter and light. Musicians played in the hall, nobles danced in silks, and the corridors shimmered with gold. At the heart of it all stood a young prince, handsome, proud, and surrounded by praise. It was the beast, but in his human form. He wore a crown of silver and eyes full of fire. Yet there was something hollow in his smile. He dismissed the poor who came begging for food. He mocked a woman who offered him a single rose, drenched from the storm, pleading for shelter. She wasn't a beggar. She was the enchantress. And when he turned her away with scorn, she transformed. The dream shifted violently, lightning cracked, the castle darkened, and the prince cried out as his form twisted. Claws, fangs, fur. Servants vanished. The laughter died. And in the heart of it all, the enchanted rose began to bloom. Beauty gasped and awoke with a start. Her hands were trembling. The fire in the hearth had gone out, and yet the scent of roses lingered. It hadn't been a dream. It was a memory. Somehow, the castle had shown her the truth. The beast was not born a monster. He was made one, by his own choices. But there was still hope. The rose still lived. And Beauty, heart-pounding, began to see him not as a creature, but as a man learning to be kind, perhaps for the first time in his life. Chapter 8, A Visit Home. After the dream, Beauty saw the beast with new eyes. He no longer frightened her. In fact, she looked forward to their dinners, the quiet conversations, the thoughtful gifts he left outside her door, the way he listened more than anyone ever had. One evening, as they watched the stars from the castle balcony, she spoke softly. "You were once a prince, weren't you?" The beast turned to her, surprised. "How do you know that?" "I saw it. In a dream. Or maybe, the castle showed me." He nodded slowly. "Then you know why I am the way I am." Beauty touched the railing. "You were cruel. But you've changed." He looked at her, eyes filled with something she couldn't name. Hope. Regret? Love? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, a tiny enchanted mirror on the table beside them began to glow. "Look," the beast said. In the mirror, Beauty saw her father. He was sick, bedridden and pale. Her sisters were searching for her, crying her name in the forest. Her heart twisted. "He's dying," she whispered. "You may go to him," the beast said gently. "But promise me you will return. In 7 days." Beauty looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I promise." That night, she kissed his hand before she left. He didn't try to hide his sadness. With a flash of light, the castle's magic transported her home. Her family rushed to her side, hugging her, sobbing with joy. Her father's eyes brightened at the sight of her. For days, Beauty stayed by his side, nursing him back to health. Her sisters, though jealous of her glowing skin and elegant dress, were kind, for once. But as the 7th day drew near, her heart wavered. She feared returning to the castle, feared what she might feel if the beast asked her again to marry him. "Just one more day," she whispered. But one more day became 2. And then, she had a dream. The beast lay in the rose garden, still as stone. The petals of the enchanted rose fell faster now. The wind cried. The castle crumbled. She awoke, heart racing. She had broken her promise. And the beast was dying. Chapter 9, Love's Last Petal. The morning light barely touched the sky when Beauty leapt from bed, threw on her cloak, and ran. She didn't stop to pack. Didn't explain. Her only thought was of him. Through the forest she raced, the path she once took now overgrown and wild, as though the castle itself was slipping from the world. Trees groaned, the wind howled, and the air grew heavy with sorrow. Finally, she saw the gates half collapsed, vines wrapped tight around their iron bones. She stumbled into the courtyard, breath ragged, dress torn. "Beast," she cried. No answer. She ran through the crumbling halls, past lifeless candelabras and frozen clocks, through the wilted rose gardens. And there he was, lying at the foot of the rosebush, eyes closed, chest barely rising. The last petal floated above him, slow, fragile, glowing. "No, no, please," she dropped to her knees. "I'm here. I came back. I'm sorry I was late." He stirred, just slightly. A whisper. "You came back." Beauty cradled his face. "Don't leave me. I didn't know what I felt before. But I do now. I love you." The final petal fell. Silence. Then a blinding light burst from the rose. Beauty covered her eyes as wind and magic swirled around them. The garden shook. The castle moaned. The beast rose from her arms, not as a creature, but as a man. Strong, handsome, and glowing with the same golden light that danced through the trees. "Beauty," he whispered, blinking in awe. His voice was human again. She gasped. "It's you." He reached for her. "It was your love. Your words broke the curse." All around them, the castle bloomed back to life. Statues stirred, servants reappeared. Light returned to the windows. Music echoed in the halls once more. The enchantment was broken. And Beauty, smiling through tears, knew her heart had finally found home. Chapter 10, Ever After. The castle glowed under golden skies. No longer cold and crumbling, it now burst with life, flowers bloomed in every window, laughter rang through every corridor, and the once forgotten halls were filled with dancing, music, and joy. The prince, no longer a beast, stood beside Beauty on the grand balcony. Below them, the kingdom gathered, cheering for the return of their lost ruler and the brave young woman who saved him not with magic, but with kindness, courage, and love. She wore a gown the color of the sunrise. He held her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. "You freed me," he said softly, "in every way I never knew I needed." Beauty smiled. "And you taught me that love is more than words, it's understanding, patience, and the bravery to forgive." Their wedding was held in the rose garden where the curse had ended. The enchanted rose now bloomed freely, a symbol of their love. The staff, once cursed into silence, danced beside them, now human again and happier than ever. Beauty's father stood proudly beside her, tears in his eyes. Even her sisters, a little less selfish now, watched in wonder, learning slowly that love, when true, changes not just hearts, but whole lives. And as the stars lit up the sky, the prince and Beauty danced beneath them, wrapped in warmth and light. The curse was gone. But the love they built, brick by brick, meal by meal, word by word, would last forever. And so, they lived, not just happily ever after, but wisely, kindly, and truly in love.